All righty, here we go. We are back in the crash course to Kabbalah. And we are speaking today about the feminine art of vulnerability, or the art of feminine vulnerability. So very exciting. We're going to talk about this stuff, and hopefully we'll make some sense about it. Now, in the past, we spoke, we're going to need to do a couple of review things in order to get us ready for what we want to say. Okay? As always, feel free to chime in, thoughts, questions, ideas, whatever you'd like. Here we go. Okay, previously when we talked about the male-female dynamic, we spoke about the idea that the masculine is about giving forth energy and potential, and the feminine is about receiving that energy and actualizing it into something real. We also showed how masculine and feminine runs through everything in this world. So when we talk about male and female, we're not just talking about guy and gal. We're talking about masculine and feminine on all levels: spiritual, emotional, psychological, physical. And then we also showed how it is relevant to relationships as well. We also spoke about the idea, obviously, that guys are more rooted in maleness and gals are more rooted in femaleness in general. And so, for example, you have sun and the moon, right? Is a manifestation of male and female. Sun gives forth energy in potential. It has the potential to light up the entire world. And moon is what receives and expresses forth the light in a way that determines how much light there is going to be in the world when it's dark, right? So therefore, again, sun is the concept of male, giving forth energy and potential. Moon, manifesting the concept of female, receiving that energy of the sun, actualizing it into something real. What light is practically going to get here at night, right? We also spoke even about our relationship with God. And this also explains why in many cases, God is referred to as the male concept, because God gives forth energy and potential for this relationship with God to happen. He puts forth our essential energy by which we are able to even exist and be here, and puts forth the opportunity to have the relationship with him. The question then becomes, how much do we go ahead and choose back to God? How much? So if we do that, we receive that energy and potential that God's sending us, and we actualize it into something real. Based on our choices, we go ahead and concretize that relationship that God is offering to us, right? And of course, a great physical, perfect, easiest example is the physical example, which is the sperm-egg dynamic, which is, again, guy gives forth energy in potential. Gal can receive that energy and potential and actualize it into something real in the form of another human being, right? So that's male and female. And we explained also how this plays out a little bit in relationships. We spoke about before. We spoke about how actually this has a lot to do with the single scene. We spoke about the idea that person could get too much into their male side or too much into their female side, and then that can present us with problems as well, and how we have to find a balance. And what essentially that looks like is guys giving forth energy with follow through, and the gal standing strong for something real in order to go ahead and ultimately the purpose of receiving and actualizing that energy and potential into something real and manifesting a real relationship, building a true home, being the person that she needs to be. And we're going to delve more into that today, especially from the feminine side, right? We're going to talk about that. But first, I'm looking for the air conditioner remote, and I have found it. So here we go. Now, before we go into the art of feminine vulnerability, I do want to share another quick idea with you, right? And or do I? You know what? We don't need to share this idea. I want to go straight into it. Now, all right. So now what we're going to look at here again is that we said before that that the masculine energy is the concept of giving forth energy and potential. The feminine energy is the concept of receiving that energy and actualizing it into something real. That means that the masculine power essentially boils down to the masculine power of initiative, and the feminine power is going to be the feminine power of vulnerability. What I mean by vulnerability, and by the way, let's talk about vulnerability for a minute, because vulnerability does get a bad rap. it does get a bad rap because vulnerability is often misunderstood, but I want to take you for a minute out of your misconceptions and misperceptions of what we mean by vulnerability and hopefully get us into a more healthy and refined way of looking at vulnerability, right? So if you ask your average Joe, or perhaps in this case, your average Jew in the street, if I were to ask, let's play the word association game, right? First word that comes to mind when I say the word vulnerability. You guys are both on mute. Help me out here.
Hurt.
Hurt. Ooh, that's worse than the one I was thinking of. Most people say, oh, emotions. Okay. Usually, I think I would say every other time I've ever played this game, the word that comes up for people is weakness. You said hurt. That's close. I mean, perhaps you could say the capacity to be hurt. That would be vulnerability, yes. Emotions are definitely play a role also. So we're dancing around what I wanted to say, but fine. Most people, their response is weakness. Vulnerability means weakness, but I beg to differ. Let me show you what I mean, right? Imagine you have a person who is, how shall we put this? They go out. Imagine a person goes out on a date, but instead of trying to look strong or shield themselves or control the situation and control a response, they go ahead and they're just like, look, I'm going to put myself out there and be open to whatever the response is going to be, right? So I'm not going to hold back. I'm not going to act out of fear. I'm not going to act out of pressure. I'm not going to act out of a way that I think that he's going to want to see me. But I'm just going to go out there and just be myself and put my authentic self out there, and whatever happens, happens. Tell me, is that strength or is that weakness?
Strength, I guess.
Yeah, right? As opposed to acting from a place of fear in which I'm afraid to put myself out there because I am afraid of how that person will respond, or if a person rejects that, they're rejecting the real me. Ooh, that hurts, right? So instead of acting out of a state of fear, right, and overcompensating for that fear by acting in a way of either anger or pressure or staying in my comfort zone instead of putting myself really out there. Instead of that, which on the surface looks like strength, but really it's an appearance of strength that's rooted in a space of weakness, right? Instead of that, you go ahead and just like, okay, look, I'm going to be my authentic and refined self. I'm going to speak my truth to power. I'm going to be who I really am. This doesn't mean to jump around and dance around and be a lunatic. That's not what we're talking about here. It just means I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to say who I am. I'm going to share my story. I'm going to share my raw feelings and desires about things, and then put it out there and then take it or leave it. That's vulnerability, right? That's coming from a place of strength. That's coming from a place of either personal strength or personal recognition that is the only way relationship really happens, right? And that's one thing I want to impress upon you here. That's one thing. That's the first thing, let's say, this is the first thing I want to impress upon you here today about the concept of vulnerability as well as the feminine energy. And that is that one of the things that are typically getting in the way of women finding their guy and finding a relationship that works and finding a relationship in which they're desired or they're able to connect is their attempt to control situations, right? And we have to get it in our thick heads and in our hearts that perhaps have been hurt in the past. We have to get it in an internalized way that relationship and control are opposites. Okay, let's get that one more time. Relationship and control are opposites. You cannot have both. A lot of people want to try to control situations. A lot of people want to try to manipulate the other person. A lot of people want to try to get the guy to respond in a certain way, and so they'll do X, Y, and Z in order to get there. A lot of gals in relationships will put a guy in a situation in which he feels, I better answer X, because if not, I will have hell to pay. My friend, that is not a relationship. And then ultimately, you are going to feel like he's not really putting himself out there to you. And he is going to feel emasculated, not having the capacity to have a choice. And that is because relationship involves two people who are truly free, who have the ability to make a choice towards one another. But a real choice towards one another means they have a real choice towards the possibility of not towards one another, right? And only in that situation where that space is allowed to exist, where a person is free to choose against what the gal wants or against the relationship, without having hell to pay, only in that situation can a person make a real choice towards the relationship. And that's the only way relationship happens, right? So you have to understand that what a lot of people are trying to control a situation in order to avoid a hurt, when they do that, they're guaranteeing hurt, right? They're guaranteeing, they might get, if the guy is weak, they might get the guy to stick into certain things, to not say certain things, to get them the present they wanted to get them, to to do the thing that they wanted the guy to do in order that they don't feel rejected. But ultimately, really, you know, and I know, and he knows that he didn't really feel a real choice to do anything else. So that's not going to be a real relationship, right? So what we're talking about here is creating that capacity for choice within the relationship, and that comes from opening up a space for the person to actually choose the other way. That means no control, right? And so that necessitates true vulnerability on the woman's part, also on the guy's part, but that's not the big deal for the guy, right? That's that's something, it exists there for the guy, but it's not the same thing, right? So this is what we mean by vulnerability. This is super, super important, right? Without vulnerability, your relationship is holding on a much more immature state. Meaning to say, if you weaseled him into choosing the thing you wanted him to choose, and it came from a place of manipulation or control or pressure or whatever, it could be still there. He could be sticking around, but you and I know that that relationship is happening on a lower plane, on a lower plane, right? And so control does not breed connectivity. Control is the antithesis of relationship, which is ultimately the antithesis of connectivity, right? So this is super, super important to create that space of vulnerability, which means that there's a raw emotion there. It means that, yeah, it could be the person has the capacity to choose the other way, right? But that's a real relationship. The person has to be allowed to go ahead and make that choice. Of course, the guy living on a more refined plane, the guy who's more worked on himself, is going to not fall for these tricks anyway, and he's going to do what the heck he wants, right? But many guys are not in that space because they've been beaten down by society and whatever. And, the whole men are aggressors kind of culture and do what the women wants and, whatever, all that kind of stuff that's out there in the world today. And we're going to talk about the emasculating society later on, hopefully. But let's understand for now that that's not, that there's something taken off of the relationship, something lost in the relationship when a person is making a choice from control and not a choice from choice. Okay, fine. So included within that, within what we just said, I want to share another principle about the art of vulnerability, and that is that to be open. And let's understand what we mean by being open, right? What we mean here is to throw away the checklist. This is a tough one for the ladies, right? The single ladies, everyone's got their checklist. Matter of fact, many people have probably encouraged you that you should make a checklist. But what I want to say is part of vulnerability, part of femininity, part of being open to receive is to throw away the checklist. So do I mean throw away the checklist completely? No. No, I do not. But I mean, as much as possible, as much as is healthy, throw away the checklist. So what are things that are not thrown away? Okay, what are things that are not thrown away? Number one, guy's got to be a good guy. What does a good guy mean? It means he's responsible. It means he treats you well. That's pretty much all I got there. He means he's responsible and he treats you well. He's not addicted to substances or things like that, right? It's about three simple things. Responsible, right? Maybe financially or personally. Treats you in a good way. Treats you nicely. Treats you with respect. And he is not addicted to substances. That is, I think, that bare minimum, that should definitely be on the checklist. And then also, I'm going to get Jewish here right now. Also, Jewishly, a person should be holding Jewishly where you are holding, right? More or less. And if you get a guy who's holding a little bit more, all the more to you, all the more power to you, right? A lot of people want that their guy should be a certain something, but you're not holding there. You're not holding on that level of religious observance or whatever it might be, right? So the question you have to ask is then take a look in the mirror and say, hold on a second, I want this guy, but why should this guy want me, right? So that then when we come into that space, we have to realize, okay, I got to up my game, right? But anyway, the point is, so yes, of course, Jewishly, according to, right, Jewishly, that means the guy's got to be, number one, the guy needs to be Jewish, right? And a bunch of other things in terms of their Jewish observance or whatever, based on where you're holding in life, Jewish value and values and things like this. So those are important, right? Ideally, what's the things that are super important to you is things that are basically not just interests for you, not just something you like, but something that is your life. He should probably at least be in agreement with those things, right? So if you are Miss Greenpeace International, the guy shouldn't be someone who wakes up every morning and burns a package of styrofoam cups because he likes the way he likes seeing how they melt. You know what I mean? That would not be good, because not only are you someone who like kind of enjoys recycling and does it because it's convenient, but like, no, you made your whole life about, recycling. So he better be at least a little bit on board with that. Okay, fine. So those things that are like bottom line, who you are, there needs to be some alignment there. But basically, all the other stuff on the checklist, all the other nonsense on the checklist, he has to have he has to be driving this kind of car, and he has to be from this kind of place, and a lot of stuff there. Most of it you can take off the list. If anyone has any questions about certain things, if you have a question about something you're thinking about on a list, feel free to ask. But the idea here is to be as open as you can be, right? And so that means that when you deal with that person, right? When you deal with the person, be open also means when you deal with the person, you go out on a date, you go out with this guy, whether it be a new guy, whether it be your husband, it doesn't matter. It means that you are unguarded, right? When you're unguarded, that means the real you comes out, right? Your real feelings, your real desires, right? And that opens up your quirkiness, your unique personality, right? So you go ahead and you put it out there, and let's see what happens. The ability to be playful in that way, to play around with the situation, say, I'm just going to be who I am, obviously keeping it kosher. And then we see what happens. That opens the door to true relationship and to true connectivity, right? So that's the situation, right? If a person goes out on a date, give it a day to find out if the person wants to go out again, right? Be open with that, be present with that not knowing, experience it, be in that moment, be vulnerable to that situation. Okay, cool. Now, another thing I want to share about this concept of vulnerability is to say what you want. Say what you want. What do I mean by that? Right? I'm not talking about needs, right? I'm not talking about needs. What I'm talking about is wants. It's sexy to have wants, meaning to say, right, when you take wants and turn those into needs, that's not sexy. That's called being a whining nag. But or spoiled, right? But it's sexy to have wants in the sense of interests, preferences. It shows you're open to the world. It shows you're open to receive. It shows that you have that you're a confident person, right? So if someone offers you something, some a potential mate, if you will, offers you something and you actually want the thing. So don't say no to be humble or something. No, to receive it, right? To receive it shows that you're open. It shows that you're real. It shows that you're confident, right? And that leads to a certain level of attractiveness, right? And that's really what vulnerability means. Vulnerability means just to be real, which leads to a certain level of maturity, right? And so, of course, all of this means a next principle that I want to share with you, which is to drop defensiveness in the face of fragility. Let's say that one more time. Drop defensiveness in the face of fragility. This means that we need to override your emotional survival instincts, because surviving as a single is killing your couplehood, right? And that's what a lot of singles are involved in, right? Again, people are afraid, people have been hurt, people are fearful, people don't want to put themselves out there and then get rejected. And so that would be too painful. So they act in a defensive manner, or they put out their thoughts, and then they'll try to kind of like curtail their thoughts and bring it back a little bit, they'll cover it up, whatever it might be, right? But because people want to be, at least have the appearance of being some kind of stronger, independent, and great, you'll be that, but then you're undermining your couplehood, right? That means to say that if you're hurt in a situation, if someone did something that hurt you or whatever, it means admit when you're hurt. Don't cover it up with anger. Don't come back at them and cover it up with anger. Admit what you're hurt, right? Express when you're hurt. So instead of being nasty, you say, ouch. Can you hear that idea? You say, ouch. And you leave that out there. Almost always, the guy will come along and try to lift you up. Why? Because I'll tell you a little secret. Don't tell anybody. The number one thing that the guy in your life wants is to make you happy. Shh, don't tell anyone. That's really what he wants. He wants to be your knight in shining armor. So if you show him that you're in a state of vulnerability and that you've been hurt, even if it's been hurt by him, he will want to swoop in. Usually he will want to swoop in and make it all better. He wants to make a difference, right? So better to be, staying in a state of vulnerability means to be present with the pain, to be able to say ouch without trying to overcompensate, without trying to yell, without trying to control, right? Because the guy just does want to be the man, the hero in shining armor, right? Right. Okay. That's principle. All of that are numerous principles, right? And that's really the first kind of section of things I wanted to share with you. Questions, thoughts, ideas, what do you guys have to say?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If someone happens to be like in any type of relationship where they feel like they can't be vulnerable at all, do you think that relationship isn't a healthy one?
Well, it depends on the person. If this person is going to be like that with pretty much everyone, there's something going on with the person, not the relationship, right? If the relationship is like this, but the person can easily have a relationship with vulnerability in other relationships, so then I wonder, what is the challenge of this particular relationship? Maybe it is a problem. Understand what I'm saying? Did you catch that?
Yeah, I did. Mm-hmm.
Right? So it depends. Again, if this is a person who is repeating these patterns of control, is repeating these patterns of overcompensating and covering up who they really are, and constantly gets hurt and then gets angry and then has, constantly emasculates the guy because doesn't allow him to actually have an opinion if it conflicts with hers. If this is a common theme and this repeats itself numerous times in this girl's life, so there's something with the girl. It's not the guy. It's not the relationship. So we have to see. We have to see. Usually these things are what's going on with the girl. Usually this is the big downfall for many, many women in terms of their relationships. You have gals who are very, this is also for many quote unquote successful women. By successful, okay, I mean financially here, and they're making in the business world, they're cutthroat, blah, blah, blah. When it comes to relationship, they can't go into that state of femininity and vulnerability. And so they're wondering, I'm successful in everything in life, but all my relationships I screw up, or all my relationships don't work out, or all my, or my relationships, the guys aren't on the par. Now, it could be that the guys aren't on the par. There's truth to that. I want to talk about the emasculation of the men in our society. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But there's also the capacity that such a woman doesn't know how to exist with a man. She doesn't know how to receive from a man. She doesn't know how to put herself into a state of vulnerability. She doesn't know how to give respect. This is all very, very, very typical. And so that's often very painful because people are in a cycle of acting in a certain way and they don't know what the problem is. They think the problem is everybody else. And by the way, sometimes they're right. Sometimes a lot of times it is other people. Sometimes the guys aren't up to par. So there's a lot of evidence they can point to, but it's not everybody. There's evidence both ways, but it's also very well could be the gal. This is a very typical issue that I deal with all the time. And so we have to learn how to speak. Again, the response of such women, if a guy does something that hurts you, right, is to snap and is to be nasty and is to be angry. And these women also think a lot of the times that their job is to help the guy, or change the guy, or find the problems and make his life better. And all these things are code words for control, right? So they go ahead and do that, and then they do it over and over again, and then the guy doesn't appreciate it, and then she calls him a loser, and he says you're, something beginning with a B, and then they break up, right? Then that breaks off. And this is going to be this gal's common theme in her life, right? Because she doesn't understand how to give respect and also how to give vulnerability, right? And also how to relinquish unhealthy control. All those things usually go together, right? It is not respectful when you come in and swoop in and try to change someone, right? If the guy asks you for something and you're being a helpful hand, etc., in the space that he wants you to the capacity he wants you to, so then maybe. But you'll have women who will get involved and then try a coup in the guy's life. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's not going to work. And so you see, these people have patterns where it happens over and over and over again. And then we got to say, okay, time to look in the mirror, And she doesn't know what she's doing wrong. She's just trying to help, just trying to make things better. She sees a problem. She's trying to solve the problem, right? Which is, by the way, typical male thing, typical male problem. Man wants to go ahead and make it better. A man has to learn a lot of times that when the girl expresses something, the girl is not asking for you to do anything, not asking for you to change everything. She wants to be heard and given a feeling of security and all that stuff. But we're not talking to men right now, right? But this is what she's doing. So this is something that is a typical pattern and destructive and doesn't work, right? Doesn't work, undermines relationship. All right. Onward to the next group of things I want to say, okay? And that is, and this actually, this is funny, this is what I was just talking about with you a second ago, is to be an asset and not a liability. To be an asset and not a liability. Again, if we're talking about vulnerability, that means to be an asset, not a liability. Also to be an asset, not, starting a revolution in the guy's life, right? So it means to say, when you envision your life with this person, are you picturing all the things he's going to do for you? Or are you picturing all the things you're going to do for him, right? Point is that when you're in a relationship, You have to think about today. Why should this person have married, right? Assuming you're married already, right? Or in a relationship. Why should this person have married you today? Why should this person have committed to you today, right? So that's an important one. That's an important one. Right? A lot of times we get into a flow of things. A lot of times we put our best foot forward when we're at the beginning of the dating process. And then as we more and more reel the guy in, we start to kind of let ourselves go. And we start to act to the lower side of ourselves, right? Especially this happens in marriage. You can easily fall to this place, right? But guess what? That's bullcrap, right? That's bullcrap. That's not okay, right? Matter of fact, I have a little story for you. I was once listening to, I don't know, a few-minute clip, I think I found on YouTube, of one of the great relationship experts of our time. Perhaps you've heard of him. His name is Howard Stern. So he was, it's a little joke there. He had, just to give you a little background of his life, at this point in his life, he had been divorced and he was now living with another girl for 7 years, right? For 7 years, he's living with this gal. And he gets on the air, there's some conversation happened, and he says, I'm never getting married again. I am never getting married again. This way, they're always auditioning. You hear that one? Now, I'm not advocating for that position, but he's speaking from a place of experience. At least, if not his own personal experience, the experience of those people around him, right? Because a lot of times people will hear this, especially women will hear this, like, wow, that's cruel, that is devaluing, right? On the one hand, that's true. On the other hand, the experience that he's speaking from is the experience of many people, which is, hold on a second. When we aren't married or when we aren't committed, she acts to this higher side of herself. She's being proactive. She's being refined. She's going the extra mile. I go ahead and make a commitment of my life to this person. And then they fall back, rest on their laurels. They fall back into the lower side of themselves. All of a sudden, instead of being a giving person, they're a receiving person. Or taking, I should say, person, right? So really the point I want to share here is that we should always be auditioning, right? We should always be auditioning. We should always be an asset, not a liability. We should always be in a state of dating mode, even when we're in married mode. Understand what I'm saying? Even when we're married, we should be in a state of dating mode. So there you go, right? And one of the ways we do this, l'chaim, by the way, one of the ways we do this is ask yourself a simple question. In relationships, are you agreeable or are you argumentative? If you're not sure, firstly, what's your gut response, right? You tell me. Are you agreeable or are you argumentative? Really, what's your gut response? Agreeable. Okay, that's great. That's good. That means you can go with the flow. That means you can be vulnerable. That means you can hear what the guy wants to say or the path he wants to go on and say, is your first response to the guy yes? Or is your first response to the guy, yes, but let me show you the other side? All right? That would be argumentative. All right? By the way, if you're not sure, if you don't have a gut response, so you tell me, what was your mother's gut response to being either agreeable or argumentative, right? Because if you don't know yourself, guess what? Probably you have an emotional inheritance there. You probably got it from your mother, maybe your father for some people, but probably your mother. So, yeah. So this is it. So like this, right? So this is, again, this is the difference of, am I trying to change the guy? Am I trying to make him succeed? Or am I relaxing into my feminine self and being ready to be taken care of? Those are two very different things. And for a guy, those are two very different things. That's the difference between you being impossible to please versus you being happyable. What's happyable? Means it's that it's seen on you, that the guy sees on you that person who is able to be made happy, which of course is super attractive. And again, what the guy's number one goal with his gal is to make her happy, to take the initiative to go ahead and to lift her up and to fulfill her, to make her happy. Now, if you show yourself as something that is not a piece of putty that he can mold towards happiness, so to speak, that you're not, it's not capable for him to do that for you. So guess what? The shutdown is coming. That the masculine shutdown is on the way. If that's how he feels, guaranteed every time, pretty much, right? And so, also a big shutdown is nagging. Nagging. I once saw a website that was talking to women. It's called a divorce website. Believe it or not, these things exist. It's a little bit sick. And the point of the divorce website was, the website was there to tell you, here's what you do in order to ultimately get the best, court outcome when you want to get divorced, right? So basically it was trying to tell you how to inspire the guy to beat you. That basically was the goal of the website. And so the site lists a bunch of things, and then it says at the end, remember ladies, nag, nag, nag. So that means to say that nagging is going to be the thing that's going to lead to divorce, not the thing that's ever going to lead to what you want, which is what? Let's not take out the garbage. I'll tell you really what you want. What you really want is relationship and connection, right? So why? Because nag is a way of manipulation to control the person to do what you want them to do. And again, that undermines intimacy, right? And it's also not very dignified at all. So you want to stay in a state of dignified, refined vulnerability. That's where we want to be, right? And then, let the guy choose what he may. He chooses to walk away, so he chooses to walk away from you as being a good woman or a mature woman, right? So, anyway, this is the idea. Okay. I'm going to give you another group of ideas right now. L'chaim again. Questions on anything we just said? I guess we don't have any questions. Okay. All right. I want to talk also a little bit about, we spoke a little bit about the mindset, about emotional connection in terms of vulnerability. I want to talk also about just practically in terms of actions. What does this look like a lot of the time, right? How do we make this happen? And so one thing we could talk about is crowbar conversations versus combination lock conversations. I think I swiped this from Laura Doyle, who's an excellent author on the subject of femininity and vulnerability. So what does that mean? Crowbar conversations. You ever have that experience? You want to get some guy to talk, you know what I mean? And so you're trying to pry him open and you're trying to do all these things, try to force them open, right? Sometimes I try to do that stuff with you guys to get you guys to actually ask questions. So, so the point here is don't try to force them open. And also certainly don't cut them off mid-sentence, right? Don't cut off. Cutting off a person when they're in their thing is definitely makes them feel like they're not being listened and like they're trying to be controlled, not being listened to, and they're trying to be controlled, right? Hear the person out and receive. But the guy's not opening up, so don't try to force him open. But what do you want to do? Instead of trying to push some talky-feely kind of conversation, right? Instead of that, here's what you want. What you want to do is get to those empty spaces in conversations? You know what I'm talking about? Like they say that it happens every 7 minutes. I don't know if it's true. But like you get the conversation comes to an end, so to speak. And there's those empty spaces. And then of course, what do? You rush to fill it because it's awkward. As they say, awkward silence, awkward pause, whatever. Instead, don't fill those spaces. Don't fill those spaces. Imagine yourself with your mouth totally glued shut, with a big fat piece of tape on your mouth, and you cannot speak during those moments. Just wait. And then wait. And then wait. And then ultimately, probably, the guy will share something. Mazel tov, he talked. So there you go. So that's one way that you can inspire communicative conversations, connective conversations. I'm trying to find some like bold word, something for like, you put in bold in an email to talk about a connective, communicative conversation. Okay, fine, back to this. Okay, so moving right along with this concept also, another idea for the feminine is to give back more than you're getting, right? Remember we said the feminine is all about receiving for the purpose, receiving and actualizing into something real, right? So we gave the sperm-egg dynamic, right? Give over something of potential. Feminine receives that energy and potential and actualizes it into something real in the form of another human being, sometimes. So, by the way, another example is wheat, right? Imagine a stereotypical example is the guy goes out to the field, he harvests some wheat, he brings it back home. The woman takes that wheat and turns it into a loaf of bread. Again, there you go. A guy brings home energy and potential, the wheat. The gal receives that energy and potential and actualizes it into something real in the form of a loaf of bread. Right? So similarly, turn your receiving into giving, right? That means to say that understand that your receiving is also giving, right? Because again, what does the guy want to do? The guy, his number one goal is to make you happy. The number one goal is to make you happy. So when you receive and allow yourself to receive in a way that expresses happiness, so that is, in a certain respect, you are receiving in a way of giving, because your receiving is giving if you're receiving the proper and wholehearted and open, vulnerable way. So you should really get that, because I know that's a tough one to think about, and a lot of times you're not focused on it, but you should really understand that that's what's going on, right? And so that means then also that if a person plans something for a long time, planned for months, and then you say thank you afterwards, it's not enough, man. The effort that went into it, the thanks at the end, the appreciation has to match the effort that went into it, right? Right? Because if he plans for months and then all you do is say thanks, that's going to lead to some resentment, right? Right. Okay. Okay. Give you another one. There are some women out there who will say, I'm the more grounded one. I get very nervous about that, right? Very nervous about that. Because there's two ways to be grounded. And you got to ask yourself, if you're a person who says, I'm the more grounded one, you got to ask yourself, are you the anchor or are you the fuel? Meaning that the more grounded one could mean two things. It could mean you're the one the guy has some grand vision and he wants to fly, and you go ahead and help to make that happen, help to facilitate that, right? He wants to go fly and you need the fuel in order to fly. So you're able to provide somehow that it actually goes ahead and happens. Awesome. A person like that will probably be appreciated. But if you're like, oh, I'm the more grounded one, so therefore I'll show you that it's really not going to work. I'll show you there's a problem with it, right? So you're not being the fuel. You are being the anchor. You're stopping the flight, right? And now you might be saying, well, hold on a second, the flight could have happened. That's what you think. It never really should have happened, or he's a little crazy, or whatever. That's what you think. That's what you think. But what you're doing is undermining his life, his vision. And you do that over and over and over again. Guess what? He's going to get feeling a little bit resentful here, feeling like this person is not my partner in life, right? And this, I'm afraid to say, this kind of stuff tends to lead to thoughts of cheating, tends to lead to thoughts of, this person is not the real partner in my life. What am I doing with her? This is a mistake. I have to look elsewhere, right? Because then he meets some gal and he talks about his ideas to this some other gal, and she is, wow, that's an amazing idea. He's like, whoa, she's inspired by me. I'm making her happy and she gets me. Then you got trouble, right? So make sure that you are the fuel and not the anchor, right? People have different ideas about things, and don't be stuck in your own little head based on what your society has told you about things, and you might have a guy who has a different vision. All right, so we said a bunch here. There's a bunch of other stuff, of course, but you know, the show must go on. Here, I got another one for you, actually. Another one is, do you want to be the celebrity or do you want to be the driver? What do I mean by that? Celebrity has a certain whim, just has a certain desire. Take me to this place. Take me to that place. The driver goes ahead and drives them around, right? Celebrity is in that state of authentic desire, right? So, and this is what the feminine is, right? The feminine should be this as well, right? To be just in a state of desire, right? Again, not needing, not coming from a place of need. I'm not talking about making your wants into needs. No, stay in your state of wants. If you have a need, you have a need, right? Okay. But stay in your state of wants, be able to express those wants, express those desires as desires, not as necessities. And maybe the guy will take you there. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll give it to you. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll do the thing that you want him to do. Maybe he won't. But that's the space that you want to be coming from. And that's the space of vulnerability, right? And this is because every hero wants and needs a damsel, right? The damsel in distress. Every hero needs the damsel. But if there's no damsel, then there's no need to be a hero. The damsel puts herself in the hands of the hero, right? Her trust, the finances, she reserves judgment. She just puts herself in the hands of the hero, right? If a person is stopping him from, if your girl is stopping him from being the hero, so don't you know, if you're not going to be the damsel, don't expect him to be the hero. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, right? So the solution to this, right, and basically this usually means that you're emasculating him. So the solution to this, of course, is to say yes to stuff. Say yes to stuff. I'm not talking about things that are not kosher. I'm talking about just things, right? Just things. Different, maybe date ideas, whatever. You know what I mean? You know what? I once took, actually a couple of times, I took gals to a horse racing track for a date. A couple of first dates there too. That is not a typical thing to do probably, but I'll tell you what, it's a heck of a lot of fun. So that's something that you might think is a little bit weird, but you know what? It's different than going, I don't know, going to some restaurant or something. It's more interesting and you can see a different part of a person. And it's plenty of opportunity to have fun and connect and whatever. So say yes is a good way to go, right? Be open to what that person has to offer. Of course, keeping it kosher all along, right? Okay. So there you go. Okay. So there are some ideas. I mentioned also that I do want to speak about the manner in which society is emasculating the men. And one way that this is happening is, oh, by the way, questions on what we said so far. Give me 1 second. You can talk. I'm still listening. I'm just pulling over to the side here to try to find something. But questions what we said so far. Anybody? Yeah, go ahead, Jessica. You got something to say?
No, no, I don't have one.
Oh, so you took off mute in order to say that you have nothing to say. Okay, gotcha. All right. Okay. Um, so basically, here's the thing. The deal is that today society is doing their best to feminize the men and masculinize the women. Um, I want to show you what I mean here. Um, all right, let's go through it from the man's side of things, right? What do I mean by feminize the men? I mean they want to make him into this soft, sensitive, in the kitchen, whole thing. And let me give you an example of what I mean, right? Imagine imagine the guy and a girl are getting married, right? So the gal will say to the guy, "What do you want to do about X? Something in the wedding. Do you want the wedding to be outdoors or indoors? Do you want to have this band or that band? Do you want this, thing or that thing, right?" And so the guy says, "Whatever you want, dear." Right? Someone told him that the wedding is for two people, the bride and her mother. So he's like, whatever you want to do. Now, really, the dude has an opinion, but he just doesn't want to be perceived as an aggressor. So he says, whatever you want. And the gal's like, I don't care, meaning she sees the positive in both and can go either way. And her deepest desire is that she wants to receive from him. And the guy says, neither do I. I also don't care. But oh, yes, he does. He does have a preference that matters to him. And the gal says, okay, let's do this, right? One of the options, which she has a small preference towards, but really she's open to do anything. But this option wasn't the one he wanted. And so now the guy starts thinking, okay, he says, but really he's thinking like this, she's destroying my life. Later, the guy shows resentment to the gal and feels like she's undermining his life. And the gal wonders what the hell she did wrong, right? This is a typical thing that happens in weddings in particular, but also in life. And so we have to understand it's because the guy is not not taking his proper initiative and assertion of self. So we should understand that this is often what's going on for the guys, and the guys do in that particular case. The guys really need to man up and assert themselves, and not just and etc. And the truth is that the women do have to give the guys the space in order to do that, right? Again, make it safe in order to have an opinion, right? Because society has so biased us that anyone who has an opinion or is assertive about something, it's as if they are aggressive and abusive and all these kind of words that they put on that. Now the new word is narcissistic. That's the popular one that I hear 3 times a week now, right? Everyone likes to diagnose each other. That's what, right? But of course, and then the women that later on complain that the guy is not a guy, and she feels like he's not a man, and she feels like he's not a, right? Doesn't have an opinion, he doesn't follow through, he doesn't whatever, right? But it's two-way street. You can't have both ways. You want that in the guy, you don't want the guy. Of course you want that in the guy. That's what it means to be a guy, and the feminine gal wants that, right? Okay. So this is what's going on because of this negative stigma that's been given to someone actually having an opinion. So we should understand that that's in the air. Now, also, we should understand on the other side, how society is masculinizing the women, right? And it's come to a place where many women feel like they will die if they give up control and manipulation, right? If they stop controlling the situation or manipulating the situation, they feel like they will die, right? It's kind of like when an alcoholic feels that he will die if he will give up the drinking. And all the friends are standing around saying, listen, just give up the drinking and there is a whole new life on the other side of the drinking. And this guy, he's totally in the drinking. He can't see his life without drinking because his whole life is with the drinking. And so he figures, if I don't have drinking, I don't have life. And everyone else who's not in that is like, dude, this is stopping you from getting life. You have life on the other side of drinking. Just drop the drinking. This is what's going on for many women when it comes to control. They feel like they will die if they give up control, if they give up manipulating situations, if they give up twisting the guy into doing what they want to do, saying what they want to say, having the opinion they want them to have, treating them in the way they think that they're supposed to be treated, right? So So this is something that we have to understand was getting in the way of relationship, right? That's getting in the way of, you think that's life, but again, that takes me right back to that line we said before, that, what the heck was that line? About singlehood and couplehood. That, that you need to override your emotional survival instincts, because surviving as a single is destroying your couplehood, right? So this is super important. And this is the art and the power of femininity. And of course, in the end, I really just want to conclude with one particular thought, and that is, in the end, that we really all want the person who's going to live to the higher side of themselves, right? To be giving, to be intellectually honest, to be emotionally mature, to be dignified, to be real. So if that's what we all want in a spouse and in a relationship, so shouldn't we all be that type of person? That's really what it comes down to, right? Okay. Questions, thoughts, ideas on anything we said, or perhaps even anything we didn't say? The hush comes over the crowd. All right. I'm going to cut the recording here, and then we'll talk for a sec. Bye, recording.